Greetings and welcome. I'm Psychic Medium Roberto, and I truly hope you're doing well. I'm guided by Spirit. Trigger warning: the subject matter is of a mature nature and deals with true crime events. All cases are treated as alleged until proven in a court of law. So, the way this episode began, I was looking into the missing persons case of Chelsea Grimm, and I have her date of birth here as well as the chart for this incident here. And this is the occasion where the police officer found Chelsea on the side of a road crying in a bit of emotional state, and there's a date stamp and a time stamp. So if you're familiar with the case, you will be familiar with the video. There was speculation that it was the boyfriend, but of course it wasn't the boyfriend, that she may have joined a cult. I don't believe she joined a cult. But certainly something suspicious did happen on this lead up. So the 28th is when the police officer approaches her, and we got the 369. Let me just add here so we see properly. And then I've also included the event where the car was found, or when the car was found rather, to look at the numbers there to see what we have. And very surprising. Now, I will just give you some preamble before we get into the mix. I was working on Chelsea's case probably 3-4 days off and on. But something always bugged me about her sequence. And I must say, I probably did her charts 3 or 4 times. And I came to the same conclusion twice, which prompted me some questions, and as the proverbial saying goes, I went down the rabbit hole and made some startling discoveries. And this has been a general theme lately, I believe, particularly, I would imagine it started just before and during the sick years. You'll recall when we all had to go into hibernation. But the issue with that hibernation came around with mainstream media was taking a knock financially. Okay? In particular, cinema, where we know the CIA and MKUltra projects are thriving with many scripts, lots of actors, and as we know, the current narrative in society, well, at least one of them, is the alleged relationship with Gadget Girl, Taylor Swift, as well as Kelsey playing out their MKUltra stories in front of us to see. Now, the main issue, you know, if you don't know, I've got 28 years experience in media. When I was in mainstream media, we also dealt with social media, obviously promoting the shows, the channels, movies. But just as an observation from 2019, is mainstream media, particularly cinema, took a knock. And you'll recall there was so much hype when Top Gun 2 came out, because all the MK participants were so happy that Tom Cruise had brought people back to the cinema. And of course the cinema and of course everyone in the rest of the world watches American cinema. For a time being, their MKUltra project must have been suffering because no one was in the cinemas. And I've been observing from a social media point of view and mainstream that yes, like myself, I've got a YouTube channel. I'm certainly not fucking paid by the CIA or any other agencies. I'm a fully independent human being. But from an observational point of view, what I've been monitoring since the sick years to current is that there's been this tussle of messaging across our screens, whether watching YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Now, the issue is manipulation within media, right? So this is not going to be about fake news and all that. Social media. Now, I've always had a suspicion that there are certain, let's call it YouTubers or TikTokers that, of course, come across as these real people in real life. But I believe there's ulterior motives behind some of these channels. And this is my discovery that I made with Chelsea. Now, before we get the heebie-jeebies, I want to point out a couple of things before we get in as an overview. So Chelsea, the policeman, very nice policeman, by the way, stops and helps her. And, a lot of body cam footage that I've watched, he's probably the nicest policeman that ever lived, right? Because under normal circumstances, if you're sitting like this, there'd be a bit of trouble. So I want to point out some key numbers that were bugging me, and then we will go deeper. This is going to be a long play. Now, at the time of this body cam, the event takes place here. Okay? Into that 24-hour zone. But we note, leading up to this event, there's an argument perhaps going on here. There's issues, and of course it is well documented that she was having issues with her boyfriend. We can even see here in the turnaround, the 3811-22, this speaks about instability here. There's a lot of instability going on, a lot of emotions, and also a lot of uncertainty. Now, for me, when you look at someone like Chelsea in distress, we unfortunately see a number like 44-8, which I find a bit strange. We see a 26-8. Is it a staging number? Was this whole thing staged? In her zone, we see a 40 with an outcome 4, dominant male energy. We note in this block here, the +6s, look at all these 7s, all out of kilter. There's chaos going on. We also note a 50 with an outcome 5, going to play a significant role. Now, why would there be higher-ups making decisions about her? You see here, 37-10-1. Why would there be higher-ups making decisions about seemingly a influencer going on holiday because she needed a break, things were going wrong at home, whatever the story was, right? However, within the sequence, we see numbers like 39-12-3. I will refresh you when we get back here. 39-12-3, well-known CIA Monarch MKUltra number. We see numbers like 33-6. And here is the clincher for me personally. So 39-12-3 appears here again. We have a 48-12-3. I will explain all of this. I want you just to be aware of these numbers, please. 55-10-1. Now, why on God's green earth, when we're dealing with a young woman who has seemingly gone away, seemingly been abducted and has come into some kind of misfortune, that we find a 55-10-1. I'll speak about this number now, because this for me this is like an odd number to find at the scene, right? Because it speaks about money. And it actually speaks about a shitload of money. Was she being paid off for work done? And I don't believe it's the case that she was sold off into trafficking. No. There's not enough trafficking numbers here for me. I don't believe she was trafficked at all. And here we have this hidden 44-8. Okay, so let's just keep those numbers in mind for now. I will tie it in a bit later. You see here 48-12-3. So just there's those numbers, right? Now, when I started seeing numbers like 39-12-3, I've obviously done a recent show with the Idaho 4 students, where that was present. And we have a 48-12-3. Now, if we just pop over here quickly, as mentioned in previous episodes, so this is the original poisoner-in-chief, Sydney, who is in many aspects, the pioneer of MKUltra with the CIA. Now, you recall the numbers from Chelsea, 48-12-3, 39-12-3. These are standout numbers, because in many cases we can argue a lot of people have a 30, outcome 3, 21-3, 12-3, 3. But once you get to bigger numbers, the pool of potential owners of these numbers, if you like, shrink dramatically. 48-12-3, 39-12-3. Okay? And we go back to Chelsea here. On the actual, I always felt this is more real because we've got a date stamp and a time stamp. Because the vehicle, for argument's sake, yes, it was discovered on October the 5th, but it could have been placed there before. Do you know what I mean? So for me, this is more of an accurate, acute date and time. So in her chart, we see 39-12-3. 39-12-3. We see 48-12-3. 48-12-3. And this is the moment I realized something is amiss. And I mentioned this in an earlier video. There is a war. There is a war going on between social media and mainstream media. Because what has happened, the social media has created an alternative space for viewing, like YouTube, right? So how do these guys start managing what we are watching and what is suggested to us, by the way, on a social media point of view? Who are we watching? Do we know them? Do we really know them? We like them. Do we know who they are? Now, if you're not familiar, let me introduce you to Lee MacMillan. All right, let me introduce you to Lee MacMillan. Why is she significant? Because at the time that I was researching and rehearsing to do crime shows, I did like a year before I actually even published my first video, to ensure that I'm in the rhythm of crimes. So just for authenticity's sake, you You can still Google this. It exists online, but I don't really post there anymore. But I have an old account with Medium. And at the time of her passing, I wrote a blog, or I wrote an article about her passing. Because at the time, if you recall, when we were in lockdown, social media was our go-to place. Online, YouTube, all of that, right? No more cinema where we can mass program the pumpkin heads. I wonder why pumpkin heads just keep coming up. I suppose we're getting close to the witching month, right? End of October situation. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you, April 12, 2021, I wrote an article about her, so I was aware of her case way before I even thought of doing this episode. And while doing this episode, her death always bothered me. Unfortunately, Lee passed on March 26, 2021. A lot of information. Lee apparently committed suicide. And I'm going to call bullshit today. Bullshit today. Because here's this number here. When we go deeper into a chart, and we'll go through it properly, but I'm just going to give you a highlight. So here's the suicide number 167, okay? However, preceding that number is 437. Now, why would there be a 437 if Lee intended to commit suicide? So 437, on one aspect, if we look at a medical death, in previous shows where things are made to look like something else, 437 always tells me, in medical cases, made to look like natural. I think we spoke about this in the previous episode. Made to look like a suicide, but in effect, we have a death of innocence outcome. And I know there's a lot of Lee fans. I even did my own video at some point. I wrote my article, like I said, yeah. It impacted me because I was exploring the space from a marketing point of view, information gathering point of view. And what I found interesting, and share your comments about this if you like, that when we get attached to social media lead characters, let's say, okay, I felt, particularly when Lee passed, that the impact was enormous. Now, the reason why the impact I feel from a psychological point of view and impact of media on the cognitive aspects of our brain is, as viewers, we can relate to these characters better than, for example, Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, all those guys, because social media and influencers present the human. The human. And when she passed, the impact for me, it scared me because I was more emotionally attached as a character to Lee, for example, than I would be to a Hollywood star. So when the passing came, I actually thought to myself, the impact of a passing is terrible. Because let's say if one of the Hollywood stars, yes, they pass, but it's not a real connection when you're on these social media platforms. And it's just by nature that you create a more emotional bond with these characters because they come across as human, right? Now, in Lee's situation, what do we find here? 39-12-3, monarch, and 44-8, Oh, did we say 44.8? No. Can't be, right? 44.8. Still as an overview. So the 39.12.3 is very present in her charts. 33.6. This is not a joke, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm telling you, I'm saying this with all respect. I'm showing you my timestamp. I was involved in the misery, if you like, of this person. And when I discovered Chelsea, I thought, let me look back at this case. And the article never looked at it from a psychic point of view. In fact, in my media life, mental health was a big driving force for me. I did a lot of shows around mental health, and that was my take on this situation, right? So we got the 39.12.3, and I want to just check something else here quickly. So Monarch, I'm going to call it Monarch, MKUltra, whatever you want to call it. As an overview, so already for me, the suicide is fake. I'm not saying, hear me out, I'm not saying a train didn't hit a car with a person in it. I'm not saying that. Because if you look here on the day, she supposedly put her car in front of a train. We have a very dubious number here, 29.11.2. So on one hand, why were there two people driving the car? And why were two people taken out? Okay, we'll get there. Right, ladies and gentlemen, that was quite a long intro, but with already a lot of information. I'm going to show you something now. So, Walt Disney bought the rights to Alice in Wonderland, right? The old famous 666 company, Walt Disney. We'll get into that a bit later on another episode, perhaps. I decided not to go into Walt Disney in this episode. The book was originally published in the 1800s in England. And as we know, England is one of the founding fathers of Satanism, modern Satanism. Sorry to say. I thought of doing that guy's show, but I'm not going to focus on Satanism ever. So, now, the release dates of a movie are like a birth date, right? The first was in London, then New York, and then mainstream release, or let's say into the US, on September the 14th. Now, when a child is born, they're born on this date. Even if you take them to the uncles and aunties and cousins on that day, and even if you take them to the grandparents on that day, the child was always born on that day. And this is the sequence we have in front of us here in London. So, July 26, 1951, the show is born. Two alarming numbers, 33.6. 33.6 here is a very, very disturbing number. So it's always interesting, these companies that promote children, theme parks for children. We know obviously there's a lot of children programming. But why are these children being forced? What are they being forced with? Because 49.13.4 speaks about children, 13.4. But the 49 is like you're forcing these kids to do something, right? Here's a horrible number, 31.4. The Grand Master Plan, 22.4. Always got to be there. Children. And I just recalled, we saw these numbers. Where did we see these numbers? Mr. Diddy. Mr. Diddy and his friends. Slap on that oil, motherfuckers. So what is the intention? 3. Yeah, look at this number, 16.7. Now we can take on one hand surveillance. Look at all these 16.7s here. Very dubious. So we go into the human aspect, right? Oh, look what we have here. 39.12.3. Monarch. MKUltra. Now you'll recall why I wanted to show you Chelsea's details. So we got the 39.12.3. Look at all these big transactional numbers here. You recall I mentioned the 55.10.1. This is not a coincidence. Let me just explain something about numerology. When you get to these higher level numbers, it is so rare to find them in everyone. It's not to say people don't have them, but what I'm saying is from a 10.1 to a 55.10.1, that's significant. So we look at Chelsea. There we go. See here? Oops, sorry. See here, 55.10.1. All the big transactional money. 39.12.3. Job done. Job well done. 49.13.4, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a joke. 48.12.3. What is going on? Are they making TV shows via YouTube, TikTok, Instagram now, CIA? So MKUltra, the founder, and we'll get into Mr. Olson. I happened to, funny enough, in my TV days, researching into MKUltra, that Frank Olson was working for the CIA, but mainly military CIA, but got caught up in the MKUltra project. The day he passes, November 28, 1953, 39.12.3, 48.12.3. Here's it here as well. In all CIA numbers here, 39.12.3, 33, 21.3, 12.3. MKUltra. So the people that pushed Frank out the building, and I just read, catching up on some information. According to Wikipedia, who we shouldn't really trust at all because you never know who's updating that information anyway, is they said they gave him LSD, but a few, like 8, 9, 10 days later, he decides to jump out a window. I don't think so. It doesn't work like that. He was shoved out the window by CIA and military. Look at the hidden 40, military. These are US military numbers: 40, 31-4, 22-4, 13-4, military. The old famous 40 with an outcome 4. Why would someone in 1953 share similar numbers with someone in 2021, 2023, 1951? Let's pop into 2010 quickly. This is the Tim Burton version. Now, you must understand, amongst these Satanists and whatever you want to call them, Illuminati, MKUltra participants, CIA, whatever you want to call it, release date is always paying homage to the founders in England. We see 33-6. These are CIA numbers here. And here we have our famous number, 39-12-3, Monarch Project, MKUltra Project. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the creator. In his passing, his wife does not want to disclose how he died. Now, we can assume of old age, right? But on the day that he passes, 39-12-3, here's all those 40, remember 40, outcome 4, 31-4, 22-4, 13-4. Yeah, they are here. See the similarities? On the day he dies, we have the same numbers, followed by these numbers, right? When this prick dies, the same numbers. As a sample, this is one of the projects he approved, Sub-Project 8, and dealt with LSD. And this is when the project was launched. 39-12-3, and the rest. What is going on? So, ladies and gentlemen, are we being fooled? This is why I'm not going to tell you how to consume your content. But before we get emotionally hooked, we should understand where it's coming from. So, as innocently as I wanted to look into the Chelsea Grimm case, 44-8, there's a plan here, staging. Now, why would we have a hidden 44? So let's talk about, I've just been reminded, her emotional state. What was going on? Because here's all the emotions here. Here's all the instability. Lots of emotions, instability. Was the programming coming undone? Was the programming coming undone? And this is the main reason why I wanted to expose this, right? I live by the text, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, motherfuckers, but rather expose them. So I've been monitoring for the past, as mentioned, 4 or 5 years. And in my opinion, MKUltra is well and alive, feeding us through influences, big names on social media platforms. As much as people went back to the cinemas to watch the new Alice Wonderland, there's a lot more people in the social media space. There are a lot more people in the social media space than what there is in mainstream. So the boys and girls in MKUltra had to start devising their own social media strategy plans. Coincidence or not? Alright, ladies and gentlemen, please leave your thoughts and comments. I thought I'd share that with you when I discovered this hidden agenda. And we got to ask ourselves, how deep is the programming? And who is programming us? So let's use discernment. One passing shot. This is Disney's original date of birth with the +3, +6, +9. Now we can argue the company was created in 1923. The CIA was only created many years later. Let's just double check that. 1947. But when I was researching Disney, I believe there was some kind of change in 86. But with influence, we note the 44-8. The 50 outcome 5. So this almost tells me, this 50 outcome 5, that Walt Disney was funded originally by mob money. And there's also concerning numbers around Disney pedophilia, 14.5. Like we saw with the BBC, and 15.6, like we saw also with the BBC. Very concerning. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, please leave your thoughts and comments. I do love engaging with them. Please stay safe, stay alert. See you in the next one. Bye for now.